Good morning. Good morning. Uh, I carry on with the yoga of relationships, chapter 12, self inquiry. You can't properly love someone else, unless you love yourself. If you are caught in the snare of duality, you undoubtedly think that the love you give someone necessarily comes at the expense of the love you give to yourself. If, for instance, your husband loves fishing, the time he spends on the river is not time he spends loving you. Whereas in the next stage, non-duality, nothing the lovers do on their own time augments or diminishes their love for each other. Self-inquiry is loving yourself as your highest value. The more you invest in your highest value, the more Ishvara, the ordainer of the field, pays attention to you. Your karma straightens out and magical things happen. Perhaps a Mahatma, a great soul, comes into your life. Consequently, your mind becomes focused, alert, calm, and capable of understanding. Ishvara is the power in you that facilitates your karma. If you create self-inquiry karma, you will grow quickly. If you create relationship karma, your path to freedom and non-dual love will be difficult. Until your self-inquiry results in firm self-knowledge, politely turn relationships away when they come knocking at your door. Dependence on anyone except your teacher and the teaching is not in your best interests. Emotionality is the sworn enemy of dispassion, indifference to the result of your actions. People seek relationships precisely because they want to be attached to someone, not for freedom. If you're not dispassionate, discrimination, an equally important qualification, will not work. Unless you're discriminating and dispassionate, the secondary qualifications will not develop. You will be easily distracted, unable to focus on the self and to control your mind and the senses. Time to drop your stuff. Let's face it, if your beliefs, opinions, philosophies, and so-called knowledge have not set you free so far, it's probably time you put them on the shelf. For freedom and non-dual love, your thinking should align with scripture, not the other way around. Love of self-inquiry is love of Ishvara, and scripture is Ishvara's words. So Ishvara is the boss, not you or your spouse. If you've heard the complete teaching in good faith and determined that self-inquiry is not for you, you can reclaim your ignorance, no questions asked. Self-inquiry, Vedanta, unfolds in three stages. In the first stage, you train the mind to listen to the teachings as they are, not as your mind interprets them. For this, you need a teacher who knows the scripture and who is willing to correct your understanding. At this dangerous stage, assuming your discrimination is keen and you're emotionally mature, you need to temporarily transfer your love to the teacher because other love relationships are counterproductive. A proper teacher will not take advantage of your love, but will send it to Ishvara. Once you've heard the complete teaching as it is, a love of contemplation develops. In this difficult stage, you need to love freedom enough to let go of cherished beliefs and opinions that are not in harmony with scripture until you are completely convinced that non-dual love is your nature. This stage culminates in self-realization, also known as firm self-knowledge or steady wisdom. A word of advice for the newly wise. At this stage, you are a babe in the woods of self-realization and self-sufficiency. There is a distinct temptation to throw caution to the wind and rush out looking for a soulmate with whom to intimately share this great love. The need for an enlightened relationship is one of the primary symptoms of enlightenment sickness, a pernicious disease. Enlightenment sickness is the doer-enjoyer ego co-opting self-knowledge. Self-knowledge means that you are the self, not an ego who knows he or she is the self. In this stage, the doer is far from gone, and the soulmate idea is just a sneaky ruse ignorance employs to keep the doer alive. Yeah. The next stage takes care of residual ignorance. Remember, self-knowledge only convinces you beyond the shadow of a doubt that your nature is non-dual love, the self. It does not automatically clear the gross and subtle karma accrued before you knew who you are. This karma basically reinforces your belief in doership. But freedom, non-dual love, is freedom from doership. At the same time, freedom from doership and the doer implies freedom for the doer, which means that the ego is not only happy with the self, it is happy with itself, warts and all. It loves unconditionally. Self-actualization assimilation. The final stage of self-inquiry, nididhyasana, is managing the mind's involuntary thoughts, as well as the habitual thoughts and feeling patterns that have survived self-realization. It is converting residual object love into self-love and removing ideas picked up in the self-realization phase. Once non-dual self-love is actualized, every relationship, intimate or not, is a love relationship. This phase makes it possible to live naturally in the world as the self, free of identification with the small self persona and the doer's limitations. Freedom from the desire-driven personality is not merely an intellectual understanding of who you are. Unless karma yoga and self-inquiry have dissolved your conditioning before you realized who you are not free yet. Many self-realized people have not dealt with love issues, that's for sure, to their detriment. Indeed. There are no levels to freedom. You're either free or you're not. But relative freedom isn't the kiss of death. So you should enjoy your relationship and persevere with karma yoga and self-inquiry until the tendency to think of yourself as a doer-enjoyer dissolves. If the doer has been negated, attachment to objects is never a problem, nor is there a need for a special someone with whom to share your love, because everyone is a special someone worthy of your love. Self-actualization is assimilation of self-knowledge. It is constantly it is constantly owning your identity as awareness, which may feel inauthentic to the doer, not because it is not convinced that it is awareness, but because the voice of diminishment has not been extirpated, has not been extinguished. You must keep asserting your wholeness with understanding, even if it feels wrong, until you experience the power of the words. The words are powerful because the self agrees. Repeated internalization of the teachings. I need to confidently assert 1. My nature is pure, unconditional love. 2. There's only one relationship, a relationship with myself. 3. When anyone anywhere experiences love, I experience love. 4. I'm of the nature of eternal, all-pervading existence, consciousness. 5. I am the only source of permanent peace, security, and happiness. 6. By my mere presence, I give life to this material body and experience this material universe. 7. I'm never affected by events that happen in the material world or to the material body. 8. When I forget my real nature, I convert my life into a loveless burden. And when I remember my nature, I convert my life into blissful entertainment. Commit this mantra from the Kaivalya Upanishad to memory and repeat it with deep feeling until it becomes a continuous and automatic thought. Once it is continuous, it will drop out of everyday consciousness, yet it will always be at your fingertips when it is needed, like your name. Quote, everything is born in me, all things have their existence in me, and everything merges back into me. I am limitless, blissful awareness, one without a second. End of quote. Taking a stand as the self is an internal process. You should not blab in the third person to impress others with Vedanta speak. You need only impress yourself. There's nothing more tedious and off-putting than self, capital S, talk to those who have no idea of what you're talking about, nor anything more inauthentic than an ego mimicking its idea of an enlightened person. How do I negate the Jeeva? One obvious manifestation of residual ignorance is the idea of I and mine. To remove it, monitor your thoughts and speech and dismiss the idea that your husband or wife, son or daughter, friends, relatives, neighbors, boss, etc. are yours. Pretend that you are working out issues with them on the ignorance level when conflict arises. If you are the self, there are no issues. If you succumb to fighting with them, you're reinforcing the belief that you are merely a limited entity, so act as though you are fighting. Desire is not real desire. Anger is not real anger. Negating the Jiva is not denying. Non-duality means non-duality. It doesn't mean that there is a Jiva, personality, and the self. Taking a stand in awareness means that you know that the Jiva is just an insubstantial appearance and as good as non-existent because its doings are merely dream doings that have no impact on you. It is an ever-changing entity playing in an ever-changing field of phenomena. I observe its trials, tribulations, and triumphs with the dispassionate eye of the self, without getting sucked in by appearances. Self-actualization will not be difficult if the Karma Yoga understanding is hardwired, because it's a kind of preliminary nididhyasana that targets the root of the problem, the doer. Karma Yoga is constantly reminding the mind that one's Jiva is only a contributor of action, while Ishvara is the controller of the results. What actual use is the doer if the results are not up to it? The doer is the part of you that is fixated on results. An excellent way to think is, it is a great blessing that I am never affected by anything happening in the mind or in the world. Getting rid of teaching remnants. If you are in the assimilation phase, it is unlikely that you are in a relationship with someone who isn't supportive of your inquiry or who is emotionally needy. But if you are, you will be so capital S, absorbed that you won't be of much use to them emotionally. If you are in a relationship with someone who is in the listening or contemplation phases, you may feel qualified to teach them, which is a poor idea, unless they request teaching. Never assume that because you are ahead of your partner spiritually, you are empowered to teach. Removing this idea is high on the list of obstacles to enjoyment of the fruit of self-realization, perfect satisfaction, because teaching is a seductive role for the doer. The entire process of self-inquiry is based on the idea that I am a doer with karma, and that I did, in quotes, did, self-inquiry to get liberated. If I believe that, I will immediately try to teach others that they should do what I did to get enlightened. But I didn't do anything to get liberated because I was the ever-free self while I was trying to get liberated. If I didn't do anything to get liberated, how can I claim that I am liberated? Therefore, I must get rid of the status of a liberated person, because it is a misconception based on an incorrect notion of who I am. Understanding this fact should also remove the notion that I am not coming back again, one of the common enlightenment myths. You won't be coming back because you weren't born in the first place. Liberation is my nature, not something to be gained or lost, which implies that the idea of qualifications, which were unconsciously formed during the listening phase, also needs to be dismissed. Sticking with this idea is tantamount to identifying with the doer. Paradoxically, however, even though qualifications are not valid as a condition for liberation, because qualifications are not real, spiritual practice is required for self-realization, because it is the best gift you can give Ishvara and your teacher for removing your ignorance. Not only is it great publicity for Vedanta, it is a great blessing for the world. Often, people who are convinced that they are the self still long for an epiphany or special experience to validate it, which means that they haven't completed stage 2, contemplation. Since I am non-dual awareness, I am always experiencing myself as far as there's no other option, so I needn't look for experiential validation of my nature. Finally, many enlightened people believe that because they know the self, everyone will see them as a great soul and shower all manner of blessings upon them. Sadly, your self-knowledge doesn't remove the self-ignorance standing in anyone else's account. Nobody appreciates you as God's gift to the world, and your claim falls on deaf ears. If the world didn't see fit to shower you with its bounty, money, sex, power, fame, etc., before you were free, it probably will not be inclined to do so once you are. unless it is your karma. That's the end of this chapter. Really good chapter, I thought. The next chapter is the stages of love relationships, and I will continue with that tomorrow. So have a really good day. Bye for now.